Right, and back at home, the mass voter registration exercise continues in its second week, even as political leaders urge the youth to ensure that they maintain peace and security in the run-up to the general election. And to continue this conversation, I'm joined here in studio by Kevin Osido, who is the Executive Director of the County Governance Watch. Kevin, many thanks for joining us in studio.
Thank you very much.
Let's begin with what does the County Governance Watch do exactly?
County Governance Watch watches over counties on very specific areas of service delivery. These are functions that are devolved as per the Schedule 4 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and we narrow down on services that involve health, water, education, agriculture, and infrastructure. So we assess the performance of counties, and through what we call the County Governance Index, we therefore rank counties and communicate back to the governors and their offices, and then we convene what we call the Governors Roundtable, where then the results of this are discussed, and they are primarily meant to influence and inform public participation, because then we note that even as we proceed with the devolved governance, the public many times are not involved. So we therefore aim to give them a platform to make their voices count in the governance of their affairs, and of course in the decision-making processes of their affairs at the county level. Yeah.
And our focus this morning, of course, is on the youth, who, of course, play a very vital part in the electoral process and in having their voices being heard. But with heightened election campaigns in the country, and especially in the counties, as leaders now move to mobilize voters, we've seen several measures termed as unorthodox by the youth, especially in trying to get other voters to register. And the bigger issue here is that these youth are being used by leaders without actually thinking. What is the situation on the ground?
This is very sad, Michelle, because in fact, if you look at the political temperatures, they are much more higher than what we saw even in 2013. And this is because as we move towards elections, and right now we have the process of voter registration going on, and politicians are taking on this as serious campaigns, despite the fact that official campaign period has not been launched. And this is very worrying, because if you listen to many of their comments, they are not aiming at ensuring that Kenyans have peace. They are only concerned about the number of votes that they are going to garner. And through the work that County Governance Watch does, which we call County Peace and Security Dialogue Series, this is what we basically go to the counties and talk to the citizens about peace and security. Many of them actually have raised concerns about the manner in which the environment is getting polarized. And if you talk about youth, then we bring in the aspect of political radicalization. And we can even move further and talk about violent extremism to that extent. And the concern, therefore, that we have is that the opposition and the government, none of them is really, in our view, aiming at restoring the peace which many citizens actually want to see. And this is evidenced by their undertones, because I think it's much more of attack. The other side is not doing this, the other side is saying this, which is not, which is not what Kenyans at this point want to see. And if you look at even the numbers, like the IEBC released yesterday, the apathy of citizens is very high. And we cannot say that Kenyans are last-minute people. I think that's a narrative which we must begin to change. And in fact, even if Kenyans are last-minute people, last-minute attitude means there is something which is not going on according to...
It's not a priority.
Exactly.
As such,
there is nothing which is moving me to make me want to wake up early in the morning to go and register. And so political parties and our mainstream politicians must now begin to have that discussion internally and ask themselves, why are Kenyans not interested in going to go and register as voters? Because if you have 200,000 per day and you only have about 86, per week, then that is really telling. That is extremely telling. Yeah.
Now, as you've rightly mentioned, political tensions are higher than we witnessed in 2013, probably even in 2007. And in both those previous elections, the youth were made up probably 90% of the number of protesters on the streets. And you've brought up the issue of political radicalization and violent extremism. In the run-up, only 6 months to the election, the youth that you talk to, what is being put on the ground to ensure that they're not used as weapons, so to speak?
Kenya's political system is quite disturbing to us as young people, because the youth are still marginalized in the sense that as much as we pride in the numbers and the statistics, that does not count, especially to the politicians. And this is, you can pick up this right from the political parties, how they engage young people. Today, we don't have political parties that have even structures to ensure that the youth are actually involved. And this involvement must therefore move on to political representation. If you look at the nominations, we still don't have young people of good numbers being nominated by these political parties.
Right.
So I am saying this so that I say that political parties and, of course, the youth of Kenya must begin to organize ourselves or themselves. Because if we do not organize ourselves, then the politicians are continuously going to take advantage of this disorganization and agonization. And if we are therefore going to influence the political system, when we meet young people in the counties, we tell them, you must begin to put up your own structures. And I'm impressed, maybe I need to say this, but also with a caveat that it is not a good picture. And what I wanted to say was that many young people are now coming up to vie for political positions like members of county assembly, members of parliament, and all that. So for instance, if you go to
all right, Kevin, I understand there's a problem with your sound. We'll be fixing that in just a moment. But even as we talk about voter registration and heightened political temperatures in the country, let's listen in to opposition leader Raila Odinga, as well as President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto reacting to Raila Odinga's allegations that the National Intelligence Service is being roped in a voter rigging scheme. Let's listen in.
Saa ile ambaye IEBC inasajili wale makarani clerks ya kusimamia uchaguzi na presiding officers na returning officers, shirika ya ujasusi inaingilia pale mbadani na anaweka watu yao.
Wamesema ati wageni kutoka Egypt, wageni kutoka Sudan, sijui Ethiopia, ati wamesemekana watapiga kura 2017. Si imeonekana wazi ya kwamba hawa watu hawako tayari kwa uchaguzi?
I don't think we should keep on making propaganda, because these are issues which will bring instability in this country. So I want to challenge the opposition. If they have any truth in this, they should come forward and tell Kenyans where this truth is. But if it is lies, then it's unfortunate.
Na hiyo kama inaendelea, hiyo ni kitu lazima sisi kama tume tunasema haifai kufanywa. Kama wewe si Mkenya, hauruhusiwi kuja hapa kujiandikisha kupiga kura.
Jaribu kuiba. Si uliiba milioni 2, jaribu hata moja yenyewe.
Watu kama hawa ni watu ambao kweli wako na nia njema ya wananchi wa jamhuri yetu ya Kenya. Kama wewe cha kwanza cha kuongea ni kutisha wenzako, ati mnaiba uchaguzi. Mkijaribu kuiba uchaguzi, Kenya hii haitakuwa Kenya ile mnajua. Mtaona leo mtaona nini? Hiyo wanasema tunaona ni nini? Na hiyo wanasema tunaiba. Kuomba kura ni kuiba? Ni kuiba.
All right, a lot of emotive reactions there from leaders across the political divide with regard to rigging of votes allegations brought up by opposition leader Raila Odinga. And here in studio, we have Kevin Osido, the executive director of the County Governance Watch.
Correct.
All right, and so like we've seen, very heightened emotions from the top leaders, so to speak. And this is something, and of course they're addressing the youth when they're speaking there. And in situations like that, a lot of emotions are elicited within the youth themselves, and they decide to support whichever candidate, not necessarily based on what they've thought and what they've evaluated. And, you know, how, for example, is something like that expected to be tackled?
This is crazy because we are talking about a midweek political rally, and people are expected to be engaging in some positive economic development activities. And over hundreds of those who are in those political rallies are actually young people. What does this therefore portend? It means that politicians and the ruling party must invest in employment opportunities for the youth. As we go to the counties, in fact, young Kenyans are very dynamic and innovative people, and their dynamism is portrayed in what they are actually doing, like entrepreneurial activities, the ability to just come up with nice ideas to do things on their own without spending time thinking about what the government is going to do. And this, therefore, should be a pointer to the politicians, despite whether it's the opposition or the ruling the government. Because then they must begin to think about how do we engage the youth outside these political rallies. And this it is even worsened by what the IEBC said yesterday, because I remember the chairman was saying that they are not meeting their targets because the people that they are targeting are in school and they are in universities and colleges. That means that you must be innovative. Think about how to meet these young people outside the political environment, because some of these people are paid to go to these rallies, and why they are getting paid is because they have nothing to do between 8 to 5, which is saddening.
In fact, many times you find them just jumping from political rallies, from Jubilee to ODM, and they'll listen to all of them because there's money that they're being given.
Exactly.
And so they don't quite even listen to the issues that are being spoken.
And if you look at the audits of some of these political party manifestos, there is nothing regarding empowering young people. There is nothing to write home about regarding youth employment. And this, in my view, therefore, means that political parties, because whether it's the government or the opposition, and the opposition many times they say is a government in waiting. So how to entice young people is tell us what you want to do to ensure that as many of us that you're meeting in the political rallies actually will be able to get employment opportunities, because that is what young people want to see. And we as an organization have gone forward to do what we call county youth policy recommendations. We've been, of course, holding forums in the counties, and we're engaging with CECs of youth ministries and chief officers of youth departments. And we just had a very successful conference that brought together about 1,800 young people drawn from the 47 counties. And that was last year in September at Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University. And some of these recommendations are honestly things that Kenyans feel every day. For example, we have almost half the population going to bed without food. This is serious if you talk about counties and agriculture. And the agriculture, I mean agricultural activities, for a long time we've been told that agriculture is the backbone of Kenya's economy. If this is the backbone of Kenya's economy, and we have almost half the population, or 75% of the population, being between 18 and 35 years old, why can't we therefore think about engaging these young people into agriculture so that then they are able to achieve something for their pockets and also improve the economy of not only
Kevin,
the country,
having worked for the County Governance Watch for a while, are young people getting that message, that this is about them? It's about what's in it for them. Are they getting that message?
When you're seated with them, like we seated here and we are talking, they get it, because that is what we have to do for that moment. But the moment you leave, that's it, because then they begin asking you, na kesho tutafanya? Nani atakuja kesho? Alafu itakuwaje kesho? Which then means that an organization like ours cannot therefore invest in that because of basic reasons, that we are not government, we don't have resources to feed young people. But the good thing is that we ensure that the outputs of these the messages of these kind of meetings are actually channeled to the right people. And that's why I said at the beginning that young Kenyans have now not decided to just agonize over their situation, but they are organizing themselves in youth networks, in like chamas, to the challenges that bedevil us today. Because that is why, therefore, political radicalization and confusion by politicians for young people will continue happening. If you go to certain wards, for example, we have, like Sarangombe here in Kibera, we have over 80 aspirants, 80 in one political party. Many of them are below the age of 35. And you see, she will be able to then propel your aspirations for that position.
Right. All right, Kevin Osido, the Executive Director of the County Governance Watch, talking to us matters of youth, peace and security in the country, just 6 months to the general election in August. And just a reminder of our Twitter poll question this morning, we were asking you, do you think African governments are well prepared to deal with humanitarian crisis caused by drought? Do you think that African governments are well prepared to deal with humanitarian crisis caused by drought? At Alba Schweizer says, with the current governance of corruption, I reckon not. And that is, of course, with regard to, he says African governments are not doing enough to deal with the impending drought situation. We also have Maya Edwin here says we have the capability. The problem is the egocentric governments that we have in Africa. Do keep your thoughts and comments coming in. We'll be sampling more of them when we come back. Take a short break here on A World View. Don't go too far. We'll be back with World Press and more.